Hello, friends! Something strange is happening in Northern Europe. A country once known for neutrality, diplomacy, and silence is now launching fighter jets, tracking submarines, expanding its navy, and preparing troops for one of the most dangerous regions in Europe. This country is Sweden, and the message coming from Stockholm is no longer soft. It is sharp, calculated, and aimed directly at the Baltic Sea. On June 13, 2026, Swedish JAS-39 Gripen fighter jets were scrambled after Russian military aircraft appeared near Swedish airspace over the Baltic. The aircraft did not cross into Swedish territory, but Sweden's reaction was immediate. Gripens went up, NATO allies responded, and Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson described it as part of a recurring Russian pattern. But the real question is this: was this just another military incident, or was it a warning sign that Sweden's new role inside NATO is beginning to change the balance of power in Europe? For more than 2 centuries, Sweden built its identity around military non-alignment. It stayed out of world wars, avoided direct military blocs, and preferred balance over confrontation. But Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine changed the map of Europe. It changed Finland, it changed NATO, and it changed Sweden. On March 7, 2024, Sweden officially became NATO's 32nd member. That single decision transformed the security architecture of Northern Europe. Suddenly, almost the entire Baltic Sea was surrounded by NATO countries. But Sweden did not join NATO empty-handed. It brought one of Europe's most advanced defense industries, a powerful air force built around the Gripen fighter jet, a navy trained for shallow Baltic warfare, and a military culture designed for survival against a larger enemy. This is not just about Sweden joining NATO. This is about NATO gaining a northern fortress.
Look at the map. To the east stands Russia. To the southeast lies Kaliningrad, one of Moscow's most militarized outposts. To the north are the Arctic routes, where NATO and Russia are watching each other more closely every year. And in the middle is the Baltic Sea. This sea is not just water. It is a military highway carrying trade, energy cables, undersea infrastructure, naval routes, and the lifelines of several NATO countries. Now imagine a crisis. Russian aircraft test the edge of NATO airspace. A submarine moves quietly beneath the surface. A suspicious tanker drifts near undersea cables. Drones appear near military facilities. No missiles are fired, no war is declared, but every side understands the signal. This is modern warfare before the first shot, and Sweden is preparing for exactly that. Sweden's first shield is in the sky. The JAS-39 Gripen is not the biggest fighter jet in Europe, and it is not marketed with the same global drama as the F-35. But that is exactly why many analysts underestimate it. The Gripen was built with a very Swedish idea: survive, disperse, refuel quickly, take off from roads, and keep fighting even if major air bases are attacked. That matters in a war with Russia, because in a real Baltic crisis, air bases would be among the first targets. Long runways, fuel depots, radar stations, and command centers would all be vulnerable. Sweden has spent decades thinking about that problem. Its answer is not just a fighter jet. Its answer is a system of small teams, hidden locations, fast turnaround, road bases, and mobile support. Gripens can appear from places the enemy does not expect, and that makes them dangerous.
That is why the June 2026 scramble was important. It was not just 2 jets going up. It was Sweden showing that its air defense readiness is active, fast, and connected to NATO's wider air picture. Russia tested the airspace, Sweden answered in minutes, and the Baltic became a little more dangerous. But air power is only one part of the story. The real strategic value of Sweden is geography. Sweden connects the Atlantic, the Arctic, the Nordic region, the Baltic states, and Poland. In a NATO defense scenario, Sweden becomes a rear area, a reinforcement corridor, and a launch pad. That means NATO troops, aircraft, weapons, radar systems, and logistics can move through Swedish territory to support the Baltic region. Before Sweden joined NATO, defending Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania was harder. NATO had to think about narrow routes, exposed supply lines, and Russian pressure from Kaliningrad and Belarus. Now the northern map looks different. Finland is in NATO, Sweden is in NATO, Norway is in NATO, Denmark is in NATO. The Baltic region is no longer isolated in the same way. This is why Moscow sees Sweden's membership as more than symbolism. It changes planning, military routes, warning time, and deterrence. And deterrence is not about saying, we want war. Deterrence means saying, do not start one, because the cost will be too high. Now go below the surface. The Baltic Sea looks small on a map, but underwater it is complex, shallow, noisy, and difficult. This is not the deep Atlantic. This is a battlefield of islands, narrow routes, seabed cables, pipelines, mines, drones, and submarines. Sweden understands this environment better than almost anyone. Its navy has spent decades preparing for a silent underwater threat. That is why Sweden's submarine program matters. The new A-26 or Blekinge class is designed for the Baltic. It is quiet, conventional, and built for shallow waters. It can stay submerged for weeks, and its design includes a special multi-mission portal that can support divers, underwater vehicles, mines, torpedoes, and seabed operations.
That one detail is extremely important because future wars may not begin with tanks crossing borders. They may begin with cables being cut, pipelines being damaged, sensors being blinded, ports being disrupted, and ships mysteriously appearing where they should not be. Sweden is not just building submarines to hunt enemy submarines, it is preparing for seabed warfare. That is the hidden battlefield most people never see. And now Sweden is also moving to strengthen its surface fleet. The planned Luleå-class frigates are expected to give Sweden stronger air defense at sea. These ships are not just patrol vessels, they are meant to protect naval groups, defend against aircraft and missiles, and operate in NATO missions far beyond Sweden's coastline. That tells us something important. Sweden is no longer thinking like a neutral country defending only its own waters. Sweden is thinking like a NATO power, a country responsible for the Baltic, responsible for the northern flank, and ready to project security rather than only receive it. This is a historic psychological shift. Sweden is not simply joining NATO meetings. Sweden is changing its military posture. Then comes Ukraine. Sweden's plan to support Ukraine with Gripen aircraft is another major signal. Ukraine's greatest need is air defense, and Sweden knows this. NATO knows this. Russia knows this. By moving toward Gripen support and deeper defense cooperation with Ukraine, Sweden is connecting its own security directly with the battlefield lessons of the Russia-Ukraine war. This is not charity, this is strategy. Every drone attack, every missile strike, every electronic warfare lesson, and every air defense challenge in Ukraine is being studied by European militaries. Sweden is watching carefully because what happens in Ukraine today may shape the Baltic battlefield tomorrow. But behind all this hardware, there is a human reality. A pilot sitting in a Gripen cockpit does not know whether the next intercept will stay peaceful. A sailor tracking a submarine does not know what is moving beneath the water. A young Swedish soldier training with NATO allies knows that the world his parents grew up in is gone. For ordinary Swedes, this is a major emotional shift. Their country did not wake up one morning and choose militarization for fun. It changed because Europe changed. The old comfort zone disappeared, and now Sweden is trying to make sure that if danger comes, it does not come unchallenged. So what is Russia really testing? Is it Sweden's radar, NATO's reaction time, the Gripen's readiness, or the political will of Stockholm? Or is it testing something deeper, the unity of the alliance itself? Because every Russian aircraft near NATO airspace creates a question. Will NATO react together? Will new members respond quickly? Will the Baltic Sea become a NATO shield or a pressure point? On June 13th, Sweden answered. The Gripens launched, the aircraft were identified, the message was sent, and no violation happened. No missile was fired, but the warning was clear. Sweden is watching, NATO is watching, and the Baltic is no longer an open chessboard.
Sweden's transformation is one of the most important military stories in Europe today. This is not just about fighter jets, submarines, or frigates. It is about a nation that spent generations outside military alliances, now becoming one of NATO's most valuable northern defenders. The Gripen protects the sky. The submarines guard the deep. The Navy watches the sea lanes. The troops train for reinforcement and defense. And behind all of it is a simple strategic message. Sweden may have been quiet for decades, but quiet does not mean weak. Now, as Russian activity increases, as NATO strengthens its northern flank, and as the Baltic becomes one of the most sensitive regions in the world, Sweden is stepping into a role history never expected from it. A neutral observer has become a frontline ally. A silent power has become a Baltic shield. And if the next crisis comes from the east, Sweden may be one of the first countries NATO looks to, because the war machine has awakened, and this time, Sweden is not standing alone.